Welcome to the Success Revenue Podcast, the only podcast in the Middle East that brings you leaders in customer success, account management, sales, and go to market to share ideas, perspectives, and valuable learnings on how to successfully drive revenue, delight customers, and take it to the next level.
We're your co-host. I'm Haida Assad, CEO of RevSetter, the customer management platform. And with me, I'm an amazing co-host, Ivy Ferrero, CS advisor, executive, and leader. And we are excited to bring you a long list of guests on this first season of the Success Revenue podcast. And today we're bringing you a real treat conversation with an influencer, thought leader, and expert in the HR and talent management space. We'll cover topics such as the difference between running talent management in the Middle East versus other markets like Europe and Americas. We'll speak about the AI inclusion in HR and talent management and how that's impacting scaling and jobs. And we'll also get a perspective on how VCs and startups are operating when it comes to talent management and growth headcount. So Ivy, today I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation. We'll be jumping into a space and a topic where really there's a hot topic currently around people and humans and all of us, and then you have AI on the other side and these things coming together. So I'm really excited to get the perspectives of today's guests on these topics. How about you? How are things going? Are you excited for this conversation?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I feel like the industry in which Natasha is on, it's competitive, being that we're in the Middle East, and it's like it always looking for high growth. What I'm excited about that I was just reading about it. Did you see that Meta, what's his name, Zuckerberg, just
Zuckerberg,
poached
yeah.
some of the Apple's he just poached some of Apple's top AI executives, and the salaries are insane.
It was interesting because he was poaching from multiple companies at the same time. So I think they just went after all of the top AI executives across like all the major companies and just said, here's a boatload of money, just leave them and come to us. And this kind of AI war that's playing out there.
No, it's so crazy. I feel like we live in such an exciting moment in history. And I definitely look forward to how Meta is going to be able to ramp up, given the fact that all of these other AI softwares, like Google just launched its AI products, and of course we have everything with ChatGPT and everything. I'm looking forward to how Meta is going to ramp up because they're behind on how many subscribers have already subscribed for all of these other AI programs.
No, definitely. They're playing in different game with their llama models, the kind of open source nature. So I'm curious to see how they're gonna kind of position themselves. They're all these giants within the space are taking different positions. I think Met with open source and what they're doing there, and then you have also ChatGPT with OpenAI with kind of the consumer-facing thing, with Anthropic with like the more kind of warm, cozy, friendly AI. Google is a bit in between everything, and I don't know exactly what they're doing. They lost a little of their advantage, but yeah, they're all kind of taking a position in the market. But it's a race, and I mean for Meta to invest that much money in hiring people, it's not a big expense compared to like if you look at, I was reading some of the financials for OpenAI yesterday, or the fact they're gonna look to bring in even more money, and they're operating at massive losses. I think they lost over 5 billion last year. They're gonna lose even more this year. Anthropic, the same thing. So they're operating on billions and billions in loss just to build that computing power and build the user base and just bring in money. So OpenAI is looking to bring in another $125 billion, I think, in funding after already bringing in like 70 billion in funding. So it's definitely an expensive arms race that's happening with these big companies right now.
Yeah, I'm excited for the users to see who's gonna come up with the
Yes.
best products because whoever comes
Yeah.
up with the best product is gonna get my money.
Exactly, exactly.
Um,
That's the benefit for all of us on the consumer side. We get to reap the benefits of the,
yeah,
the billions and billions that they're investing right now. So, well, we'll take that when it comes.
yeah,
Awesome. But yeah, I'm excited either
yeah, I
to hear
love
from
that.
our guests on the people side of all this because, you know, within all the AI and all the technology talk, there's always people in the middle of it. So, what do you say? Should we jump into today's conversation?
Yeah, let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's bring in Natasha in. All right, guys, I am so excited because today's guest is Natasha Corbin. I actually met Natasha about a couple of weeks ago. She's a boardroom whisperer, a startup talent queen, and the name every founder should know. She scaled teams at Bumble, advised VCs, and built leadership pipelines across MENA and beyond. Now, as a founder of Start MEA, she helps startups grow without burning out their people or their budgets. With 15 years in global talent, a sharp eye for organizational design, and a no bluff take on people strategy, Natasha brings energy, clarity, and serious edge to today's conversation. She's also a certified advisory board chair, a keynote speaker, a voiceover artist, and a part-time model because of course she is, like, you should see her face. So let's go ahead and get into this conversation. Natasha, I am so excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you.
I
Thank
did
you for
talk
having
to,
me. Hey, Haida. Hey, Ivy. How are you
wow,
both?
they're great.
Really,
Pleasure to
really
That's
have
quite
you
an
good.
on.
intro. Thank you.
Well, you have quite a background. But yeah, Natasha, we're so excited to have you. If you just want to go ahead and get us started with telling us a little bit more about where you're from, where you're based, and a little bit of a backstory on how you ended up in your industry.
Sure. So, hi, everyone. I'm Natasha Corbin, founder of Start MEA. I'm a talent acquisition director and HR advisor with over 15 years of experience scaling high growth startups across the UK, US, and MENA. I specialize in executive search, talent strategy, and workforce planning, partnering with VCs and founders to align people with business growth. And
Wow.
outside of my work, you'll find me at concerts, in the gym, or adventures with my family. But I believe in big ambition and big joy going hand in hand.
Beautiful, beautiful. And Natasha, where are you from originally?
So I'm originally from the UK, grew up in London, and lived there for the majority of my life, and then moved to Dubai about 4 years ago. So I started out in in-house roles in HR across tech giants like Bumble and various others. Then moved to the Middle East and was working at Talabat, Property Finder, and now more recently transitioned into VC advisory after spotting a gap in strategic talent, working, supporting startups.
Wow, so cool. I once upon a time when I was single in my pre mother days, I used Bumble. I think it's an incredible app to meet any prospects. But yeah, that's such a cool background that you actually work at Bumble. And Natasha, tell us a little bit more about your current company, Star Mia.
Yeah, sure. So I started Start MEA as a HR consultant or a consultancy to help MENA startups and also VC with their portfolios, specifically with talent strategy, leadership hiring, and org design. Startups deserve to have structured HR thinking, and sometimes that may be delayed until later stages, but there are, tried and tested people strategies that can really help organizations reach their milestones, and kind of people and HR strategy shouldn't be abstract to a business's goals, especially in the early stages.
Oh, yeah, I can't imagine. And
Mm.
I'm assuming because one of the things that startups are trying to do is they're trying to minimize their budget. So I'm assuming a lot of the times what they do with HR is just try to outsource it while they actually get tractions, get business on board and everything. So have you enjoyed working with startups? Like, versus what you used to do before, which was like working under big organizations?
Yeah. So in a full-time capacity, it would be a much larger kind of MNC. Telebat is a huge organization and some of the other ones that I've worked for. But in the startup space, what I love is the variety. What I love is the kind of disruption and the agility of the way that they work. And my expertise in corporate allows me to help startups with kind of more strategic firepower, but maybe in a fractional or in a project capacity that, is more suited to startups and smaller businesses.
Got it.
That's so interesting. And someone that's a three-time founder, a startup builder, I understand kind of that exact need and challenge and opportunity as well, and constructing that really well. So it's a great domain. I really like also that pivot that you said you made into kind of working with VCs now as they're advising so many startups, and feel that the talent piece of that advisory is always a little bit lacking. At least it has been before. It's more about, okay, hire this executive or that executive or VP or whatever role it is, versus how do you actually structure this the proper way to scale your team and organization. And a lot of founders don't have that experience. So that's amazing that you can come in there and like bridge that gap for them, right?
Some of the larger VCs do have portfolio services. For example, I am a mentor within the 500 global network, and there are founders from various different funds that come back and give back to the community or give back to the founders coming behind them. But also there are subject matter experts within the network that can support, mentor, and work within some of the, for example, incubator programs, and that's kind of where the advisory piece kind of comes out of, for me anyway.
Yeah, no, that's great. Part of the portfolio team, there's some platform team, service team, there's some of the different ECs call them. So that's amazing. And I'm curious also, Natasha, so you kind of made that move from the UK and London to Dubai 4 years ago. Kind of what prompted that move? And then I'm also curious to hear your thoughts on how kind of the talent space in the Middle East is and how that's been evolving over that last 4 years that you've been there.
Yeah. So ultimately, I was attracted to the growth and the lifestyle within the UAE. But I genuinely think this region, especially the big players within this region, UAE, Saudi, etc., really, especially in people, especially in talent acquisition, specifically requires growth. And that was the region where I could see the most promise and the most activity from that side of things. When looking for, corporate roles at that time, I was looking for businesses that were in their hyper growth phase, were in their expansion phase, and the Middle East was where it was at. And in regards to, people strategy or, people functions, it's great, but it has more to go in terms of the investment that organizations put within people and how people strategy kind of needs to be closer aligned to business strategy. But I do love this landscape, and it's a great place for startups and scale ups to kind of operate. And it's great for me, selfishly. I get to work with so many great companies.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, it's I agree with you, and definitely in terms of the fact that it's a huge growth region with a lot of opportunity, and I think it must be very exciting for you, just like you said, as you see more and more startups, more and more companies are investing here, and that leads to specifically those challenges that you're help solve for. And so I can definitely see how that's an exciting move, and part of why I'm also in Dubai and for Ivy as well. We moved to the region to expand our careers or businesses or different areas because of those opportunities. So that's awesome to hear, Natasha. And kind of to take that a step further, I was kind of curious about this. As you're advising, as maybe a twofold question here, do you feel there's a difference as you're advising companies here in the Middle East versus companies in Europe or in America, if you're working with global companies, in terms of how to approach talent? Or are you kind of using more of do you have certain principles or certain approaches to how to advise these companies that are more universal in terms of how to approach talent management and people and these things, or are there nuances between the regions that you want to highlight?
So I would say that in Europe and the US, there's a better embedding of HR functions and honestly more allocation to in-house teams. So, for example, the people that I may be working with will probably be CHROs that just need some specific expertise, maybe on this region, or working within a wider HR function. In the Middle East, tend to work with smaller HR functions and sometimes more with founders and senior leaders within the organization because sometimes the talent isn't necessarily in-house. So that's the shift that I would say. In terms of attitudes and potentially the work that I may be doing, I would definitely say in the Middle East, it's more aggressive. It's more growth focused. It's more expansion focused for sure. And there's a big demand for transformation. So orgs are reorging, are looking into new verticals and into new countries within the region. That's kind of some of the things that I come across.
Mm, so interesting. And Natasha, with your experience working with different startups, I'm curious to find out like what does a smart workforce planning look like in a Series A versus a Series B environment where every hire actually matters more than anything.
I think in that's a really good question. Thank you. In Series A, it's about the founding team. It's about the key pillars of the organization, setting the strategy and intention for where you want to go. Um, More doers and less operators, people that have, depth of knowledge that can be strategic, but also hands on and effectively, by themselves for a period of time. I think that would be the difference. I think in Series B, depending on if it's initial Series B, similar, but if it's later towards Series B, then you're hiring more operators, you're expanding your scope of control, more process orientated, and manage extra managerial layers. That's what I would say.
Got it. And Natasha, one of the things that I've seen a lot on LinkedIn, especially around founders who have built big teams, they talk about how important those first few hires are and how you need A team players. And how a lot of founders have such a hard time letting go of somebody who is like not pulling in their weight. So it's bringing down the environment. Did you also see that a lot with founders that they have a hard time picking talent and also letting go of talent when it's not a good fit?
I think that, it's akin to what I said previously, that people strategy, not to over engineer in the early stages, but looking at the core competencies, the key characteristics, and the people strategy. When you're hiring in Series A and initial smaller businesses, you're not hiring a team, you're hiring the DNA of your organization. And if you're not clear on that end picture, you will hire people that may be immediately available or that they kind of gelled with at the time versus slotting them into a bigger picture and a longer play.
Got it. Yeah, yeah, that completely makes sense. I can see how that could be very tricky. And I wanted to find out, like, from your view, from your experience now being in MENA, what do you think companies are doing right when it comes down to building talent strategies? And what do you think are some of the blind spots?
I think that what businesses are doing well, I think that they are really emphasizing on transferable skills, really putting in a lot of effort to attract people, whether it's working with external partners or really trying to, give potential candidates a view into their organization and being authentic. I think that's something that's quite refreshing out here. And in terms of blind spots, I would say that delaying people strategy and or infrastructure until it breaks is something that comes back to bite. For example, performance management. We talk about hiring the wrong people and not knowing how to manage those conversations. It's usually down to a lack of communication and a lack of process and infrastructure. So really being clear around what your company strategy is and communicating that with the organization, OKRs, and then subsequently performance management. And a lot of those, nearly all of those things can't be implemented without strong people leaders and people support.
Mm, yeah, that
Yeah.
completely makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And it takes me also to kind of another obviously hot button topic to discuss, which is the AI, right, within the space or just in general. And As our listeners know, and as Natasha, you might know, I run an AI company. We work with agentic AI agents and these things, but also at the same time, I deeply believe in a hybrid future where we'll have humans and AI and agents. These things work together as part of kind of the overall workforce, doing different jobs and tasks, and kind of doing that in unison to amplify human impact versus a replacement vision of humans, right? But I'm curious to kind of, I'm sure that's a conversation now that's coming up a lot. How to leverage AI, it creates maybe anxiety with some people in terms of their jobs and securing these things. But before we talk about maybe some of the risks that you see there, I'd love to hear kind of some of your, from a positive perspective, what are some of the opportunities and positive things that you see in terms of AI within HR, within people management, or within just enabling people to be more impactful in their jobs? If we start there.
I think that, you know, with any kind of big shift and change, there will be anxiety and uncertainty in terms of how to navigate that environment and also how to incorporate that within specific organizations and what does AI mean for each organization. But I do think, you've mentioned already optimization, really taking away operational and tactical tasks, um, automating, being able to provide business insights to either, internal stakeholders or to customers, understanding, everything internally and externally a lot better. And also not just operationally, but then more predictively to then, identify patterns, more easily, and to help with simulations and forecasts. So for me, I see it as an opportunity for all parts of the organization to be more efficient, but also to enable and empower the employees to do more, go further, and challenge and have kind of better insights in order to do so.
Mm, yeah. No, that I think
I
that's
like
a
that.
great way of putting it. And I'm curious kind of how this maybe, if at all, has shifted your approach or the approach that you're seeing out in the market in terms of hiring, but also scaling and creating that organization. And I'll give you an example. Like I mentioned, this is so Revsetter is my third company. I've had other companies before, and been part of four startups all the way to IPO. And I've traditionally scaled, you scale through headcount, right? You build up the organization, you have headcount, you add more people, and you scale that in a certain way. Now, how I'm approaching scaling it is very different, right? Again, part of it being an AI company, an agentic company, you live what you preach and what you do, of course. But I see where we can, and we've already done that, where we can scale much further and longer with fewer people. But the hiring profile of those people is different than what I hired for before in my previous companies. More generalists that can do a lot of things, have deep knowledge, but can leverage AI in a lot of ways. How do you see? Have you shifted at all the way that you approach how you scale headcount and people in the organization, or do you see any trends out there because of AI or the opportunities AI presents?
I would say that the adoption in house in HR is slow. I think that
Hmm.
in the examples that I've seen is more around business operations and in strategy, etc. But what I will say in my day to day and in some of the implementations that I've been a part of, AI is there's a big buzz around AI and talent acquisition and how, because it's such a heavy task, how it could be automated and how it can be used. I think that there's a responsibility to ensure that, you know, employee experience is there, that AI doesn't use, discriminatory or non-inclusive algorithms to come to their conclusion. So I think that there's still a little bit more learning that needs to be done. But I think in terms of tasks, AI, helps massively and can be a great help. And I'm just looking forward to all of more products that come out. If I think about tools that I may have used maybe a year ago that I didn't like so much, and now, for example, the improvement, whether it's in the LLMs, ChatGPT, and how
Hmm.
much smarter it's getting,
Yeah.
and or selection tools, for example, they're getting better for sure. It's
Yeah.
improving every day.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's actually funny. Before our recording, our meeting with a client of ours, and we built an agent during the call because they wanted to build an agent to review applications, resumes and cover letters and try and score them and everything. And that took 10, 15 minutes to build. And, they're uploading some resumes to test it out and getting very good results as an initial kind of check screening. Okay, is it meeting the criteria, the requirements, anything, summaries of the key points, etc. And that's something, as you know, takes a long time. As for all of us that hired a lot of people over the years, reviewing those initial applications take a lot of time. And so they're like, let's build something for this and take 15 minutes to do, which is 6 months ago, 12 months ago, you couldn't have done that fast and that efficiently. So you think about where we'll be maybe in 12 months or 24 months is, yeah, the sky's the limit there. But it's just such an interesting use
The
case.
future's
Literally
bright.
before this call. Yeah, it's literally before this call that came up.
Natasha, and I'm curious now to talk a little bit more about like your experience as a woman in a leadership position and now owning your own firm. From somebody who has built influence across HR and boardrooms and VCs, what would you say is one lesson that you would want to share with rising female leaders?
I would say don't wait for permission. I'd say walk in, own your voice, build allies, and turn your lived experiences into leadership capital. In terms of, you know, and also I would look for mentors, and mentors don't always have to be, another female leader. It can be, advocates in all spaces, and it can be, your male boss or an ex-male colleague. But definitely look to amplify your voice because representation matters so much, and also pay it back and pay it forward. So help mentor and reach out to people or offer advice to people that need it, especially females if you can, because it builds confidence, it builds traction, and it effectively builds your brand and confidence.
Mm, I love that. I love that. And I'm curious to find out if you've ever navigated like imposter syndrome at like an executive level. And if so, what kind of helped you move through it?
Especially in the kind of advisory space, in the board capacity, I'm often the youngest person there by probably a decade sometimes. And sometimes one of the few ladies in that situation. But what I found is that everyone's story is unique, and what you bring is
Mm.
is your currency, and also that you deserve to be there. You have the expertise, you have the knowledge to be there, and also everyone's figuring it out themselves. So if you ever feel like you don't have everything together, the person to the left and the person to the right probably doesn't have it either.
Yeah.
So don't let imposter syndrome stop you doing anything. You have to be bad at something to be great at something at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of women, when we get into a leadership position, we feel like we maybe need to toughen up or be taken serious. I remember like and it's funny that I do this, but I actually when I go to job interviews, I wear glasses, okay? Because I have noticed that when I wear glasses, clients take me either more serious. I don't know if I look a little older or whatnot, but I do feel like women have this sort of like pressure to be taken more serious. The advice that you just gave is extremely valuable. I do think that at the end of the day, we all have something to offer, and you're in that position for a reason. The company selected you for a reason, and ultimately, everybody's going through imposter syndrome. So I really enjoyed what you just mentioned there.
And let's piggyback off of that as well, because I think it's as someone and people where you are in terms of positions of hiring other people, right? I think sometimes there's kind of a built-in bias to the hiring process of organizations. I've gone through many organizations where we've kind of looked at this and refactored things, and it could be a systematic bias, not in terms of your thinking, but just where are you looking for applicants from? Are you just going to certain schools or to other schools, or are you looking at just certain types of profiles because it's the criteria that fits culturally, right? The culture fit thing. I'm curious to kind of hear from you, Natasha. How do you and navigate and advise in terms of kind of trying to remove as many of those biases as possible, not just for the sake of, let's not be biased and all that stuff. Sometimes it gets a little bit politicized like that, but it's really about the bigger the pool of people that you're looking at, the more diverse, the more often you'll find really truly superstars that can help your organization, right? So that's really it's a business benefit more than just for the sake of doing it. How do you approach that? So I'm sure that's a conversation that comes up at times. And also it's something that's built into some of these organizations or even VCs in terms of how they look at profiles to hire.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, getting into positions of seniority, you have to challenge. You have to challenge and call it out. A lot of the time, I've hired many managing directors, many director plus candidates, and there's often at that level the requirement to be extroverted and effectively describing many masculine traits. And I think that in leadership, hiring, you have to ensure that there is a space, and in lots of instances, I have to create that space for different personality types, for varied backgrounds, and actually challenging the status quo. So instead of saying, let's add more of something, say let's minimize what we already have. We're not really diverse in the thoughts, in the industry experience, in the geographical location. So, what do we do to improve our strengths, improve our span of vision? And I think that
Yeah.
kind of leads, as you mentioned, Haida, like it leads with what can we gain versus what the the perceived loss in that situation.
Mhm. Sure. Yep. No, I think that perception shift is really critical. So it becomes about still the ultimate goal of the business value and all these different things. But that's really something that fosters that versus hurts it. So I agree with that.
If you've been in a career for 10, 15 years where you went to school is completely irrelevant. If that's all that you have to give at 20
Yes.
years in, then it's pretty sad. You should have achieved something else at that point, right? And that's kind of always what I push
Yeah,
for.
exactly. Yeah, no, 100%. I think, and I say it all the time as well. It's like, all right, that bachelor's degree or MBA, whatever you have, like, well, that should get you the first job, help you get that, but then from there, it's what you're doing in your career. It becomes very irrelevant where you went to school and what you did, if you're doing a good enough job there throughout your career. So I definitely agree there. And do you think kind of if you would, and obviously you advise companies every day around these different things, but I'm curious when you do your work, right? When you work with these companies, I think one perception, maybe misperception, I would rather describe it as with talent management, HR, and that function is it's a little bit less scientific sometimes. I know the psychology piece comes in, but it's like more kind of people and feelings and these things. But in reality, like it's such a critical part of the business because the people and your clients essentially typically the two most valuable assets that you have ultimately. Can you talk about maybe some of the frameworks that you like to use or deploy into organizations in terms of HR or talent management? Because we have frameworks and on the business side and operation and go to market everywhere. There's all these frameworks that kind of speak to how to do it properly. Do you have any favorite frameworks or models that you like to kind of lean on or use within your capacity?
One of the things that I love to do is that in many instances, and especially the smaller businesses, talent acquisition is a kind of center of excellence or subject matter um, area that businesses or founders have no issue kind of, outsourcing recruitment, right? But they kind of think, or maybe sometimes don't think at all about org design and or reward um, talent development, engagement. So one of the things that I love to do from a framework perspective is really look at people audit and what does that mean? What infrastructure do you already have in place? And almost like a SWOT analysis, if you're not looking at performance management, at all, or if, how an organization, you know, how is your how are your layers built? You have a director who operates as an individual contributor because they have they work on their own. Okay, fine. There can be principal roles within an organization, but that can't be everywhere. Are you incredibly top heavy? Span of control, you're a manager, you have one direct report. That kind of sounds like a mismatch. So my kind of framework or my go-to is always trying to evaluate the org and look at where there are gaps in terms of a HR function. Also, just really kind of leaning in on company strategy. Is that clear? Is that communicated? Do you have company OKRs that you're working towards? And do your departments actually have OKRs that are moving those needles? You see that people are working on things that are completely abstract to the company strategy, or that the company strategy hasn't even been communicated and the operating model, isn't clear. So that's where I would start before implementing particular frameworks, because you need to ensure that there's a connect in terms of the work that you're doing. You can implement a strategy or a particular framework that's misaligned to what the organization is doing or needs.
Like that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That's great. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Amazing, Natasha. So awesome. So we've been running through the conversation, and what we like to kind of do towards the tail end of our conversations is do like this lightning round, questions and answers. We'll hit you with a couple of quick questions, and we'd love to hear your quick answers to those. So I just want to see, Natasha, are you ready for the lightning round portion of our conversation?
Sure.
Awesome. All right, let's do it. Let's do it. Good. And it won't be too hard of questions, I promise. All right, so the first is actually, let's start us off with a nice, easy one here. What's your favorite content to consume right now? Favorite book, podcasts, anything else?
I love Diary of a CEO. I watch it all of the time, even go back and watch some of the old ones. So that's a quick fire one for me.
That's so good.
Yeah, that's a great one. I know I agree. That's one of your favorites as well. So that's a good recommendation. Amazing. And then, so the second question, maybe same answer here, but any people or person that you take inspiration from or that you would recommend others to follow and check out their stuff?
Adam Grant, pretty cool. Like short, kind of like really not short, but thoughtful kind of insights. I wouldn't say he's a stoic, but a lot of the stuff that he says resonates, and pretty cool TED Talks as well.
Yep, Adam Grant is great.
I haven't checked his TED Talks. I need to check them out.
Yeah, and a lot of his Twitter feed is really poignant. I find myself kind of thinking, kind of revisiting them a lot.
Yep, great recommendation. And then my last question, I really like this question actually, but any recent kind of ideas or concepts that you heard or learned about that you find really exciting? Could be something really big, a big idea, or something more small, but anything recently that you really started learning about, heard about, that intrigues you?
I would say micro retiring. You see this in Gen Z and some of the millennials. And it kind of, the concept is effectively, instead of waiting until you retire to travel the world, you take a break mid-career and do what you want to do effectively, and see where life takes you. I think I'm kind of in that mode right now, and off the back of that, fractional leadership. So bringing seasoned execs in part-time to plug knowledge gaps without kind of changing your whole organization. So it kind of leads into what I'm doing at the minute. But I'd say that's the kind of micro retiring and then fractional leadership.
I love that. I love that.
I like that, yeah.
Natasha, and this is my favorite question to ask. What is one life philosophy you like to live by?
It's an inside joke with all my friends, but I always say all is well. You're working in HR and working in startups, it can always be some super high stressful and situation, but all is well and it all works out in the end. Everything happens for a reason. Those are the things that I say on a daily basis. All is well, and it all works out in the end. Those are definitely life philosophies.
Sometimes the best advice is so simple, right? And Natasha, on the weekends when you are trying to decompress from your week, what are you up to?
I will probably be at the gym.
Nice.
Probably a yoga class or mobility class. I think when you work hard, you build up a lot of tension in the body. So a lot of mobility exercises, just chilled on the weekend for sure. Living in Dubai, the beach, 100%, beach, pool, um, easy entertainment
Yeah.
for the kids as well.
Yes, yeah, super easy entertainment. And lastly, if anybody wants to connect with you, what's the best way of doing so?
Sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn. So my name is Natasha Corbin on LinkedIn. Also check out my website, startmea.com. That's the best place to find me.
Okay, amazing. And we'll make sure we
Amazing.
also link your LinkedIn onto the description of the podcast. Natasha, it has been an amazing journey speaking to you and getting to know a little bit more about you and about your world. Thank you so much for taking the day to be with us and to spark so many thoughts and ideas into our head.
Thank you, Ivy.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, Ida.
Natasha.
We want to thank our sponsors for supporting the Sussex Revenue podcast. RevSetter is the #1 customer success and management platform in the Middle East region, offering global capabilities mixed with regional solutions that helps your CS, account management, and go-to-market teams 10x efficiency, improve customer experience, and turbocharge customer retention rates.
And thank you to Medlify, a leading marketplace for workers and employers in the healthcare space. Needs and demands meet, create benefits for both sides. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.